try on that left-hand side. What happened?
Oh, but I've gone up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit of meat this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Scrum of the Earth podcast, the weekly show for news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more, all about the world of rugby. My name is David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it, all over the globe. If you'd like to get in touch, I'm easy to find on all your socials, and you can always just drop an email to thescrumoftheearth@gmail.com. Well, you may be a bit confused this week, wondering, is this the weekly episode? Is this a bonus episode? And guess what? You're right. This is your regular weekly episode and a bonus episode, because joining me today to look back on this weekend's action is one of my favorite returning guests. I've also got his cat here on the screen just in case, but that's, of course, you might know him as Stat Boy, you might know him as Cat Boy, but either way, he's Huw Griffin. Huw, welcome back. How the heck are you, my friend?
I'm great, thanks, David. Thanks for having me on. I sent you that picture of my cat under the pretense it was for your son, because he was asking what my cat looks like. And now here I find it's all over the internet. So I feel duped. My lawyers will be in touch.
Oh, man. Hey, man, the cat went viral. Well, it's not my fault.
Huw, he's got his own YouTube channel.
Oh, really? I mean, I should subscribe, clearly.
Yeah.
I'll get behind the paywall soon. Huw, I always like to start you off with an interesting stat. I think I've got a good one for you this time. Are you ready?
Hit me.
Not a rugby stat, but I do think you'll like it, seeing as you're a pet owner. So Americans generally love Valentine's Day, or at least we feel obligated to spend a whole ton of money on it. Did you know, though, that 20% of all the money spent on Valentine's Day gifts in America are purchased for pets? The question is, what are you getting Thistle this February?
Well, the funny thing about, firstly, that's a very American-sounding stat. I would be surprised. And maybe like Japan and South Korea, I can believe that they have similar sort of purchase rates based on where the majority of pet videos on YouTube and Instagram and things tend to come from. But what will Thistle be getting for Valentine's Day? Do you know what it is? When you have at least in our experience, when we've got a cat, people get for you presents for the cat. So Thistle currently has more treats than when we got him. We've actually got more like dreamies and things than we started with. So he has started to get dreamies every day just to try and bloody use up the amount of dreamies that he's got in his lifetime.
Tough to be a cat.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as always, we start with our current updates. Usually this is just some little tidbit from my own life, and I do have that, but I thought we'd extend this bit to our guest this week, Huw. I imagine you do have some current updates for us.
Well, just I know that our two shows have a bit of a crossover, and people might be wondering why the Pirate Rugby logo has disappeared from Apple Podcasts and why a massive picture of my face is now staring at them whenever they listen to the show previously known as the Friday Breakfast Show and things. So anybody who wasn't aware, Ender has stepped back from doing Pirate. So it's just a one-man show at the moment. And there was a point where I was running like 5 different Twitter accounts, 3 different YouTube channels, 3 different TikTok channels and things. And I was like, this is unsustainable. So now I've got everything under one name, and it's my name, or HG Rugby. And that's a lot easier, and it means that I can go outside and remind myself what birdsong sounds like and things like that. I can see my family and, small things like that. So that's why the Pirate Rugby name has disappeared for now, and everything is just under my name. So generally all the content is the same, exactly the same. It's just a different name. Well,
my own current update is got a new job. Oh. Listeners may or may not know, I got laid off due to COVID almost exactly. Actually, no, wait. It was exactly 4 years ago today. I just realized. Every day since then has been a serious struggle. I finally got a job I'm really looking forward to. It's a nice little raise. It's a great team I'm going to be working with. I get to leave the place where I've kind of felt trapped for a couple of years now. So personally, just breathing a huge sigh of relief. Thanks to everyone who sort of reached out to express support. It's just very much appreciated. I feel like a huge weight has been lifted. So cheers to me.
Congratulations.
Very excited. November 12th is the first day I'll be there, so going to give myself a nice week off in between there. So, of course, that brings us to our reviews. I have to say, it's really cool to again have somebody on the show that I can count on for watching an absurd ton of rugby, much like myself. Off the top of your head, how would you rate this weekend on a scale of Callum Sheedy at Cardiff to Callum Sheedy at Bristol Bears?
Which is the good end of that scale?
It is for you to decide.
I think the URC has been brilliant this season. So some of the results, the competitiveness of the league, I think it's been really thrilling, storylines everywhere. Top 14 has been a slow burner. I think we'll talk about it in depth a bit later, but the kind of two top clubs have been going well, and there's some clubs that have just been absolutely dire so far. So to be honest, I've been enjoying the first couple of weekends. Well, I think this is the first weekend in what feels like forever that there's only club rugby and no international rugby. Because even like the last couple of weekends, we've had WXV and club rugby at the same time, and we went straight from the rugby championship into club rugby season. So I'm just enjoying some sense of normality. Normality is the word. Before we go straight back into flipping international rugby again in November.
Yeah, it's like coming down the pike right now.
Yeah.
But I think my count last week was 37 games to cover, and this week 26. A lot more reasonable. Still preposterous, but it seems more reasonable.
Definitely.
So we talked about this ahead of time. I wanted to give you the pick for which competition to look at first, with, of course, the exception of the NPC Semi Finals, which I feel sure you missed, giving your well-known roiling hatred of everyone and anything that originates from any hemisphere besides the northern hemisphere, of course. By the way, so I imagine you didn't catch it, right?
I did not. I have
but
seen a
how
lot of
easy
other
would it
people
be
talking about
if you were like if you were like, oh, I want to start watching the NPC? Is it easy? Would you have to be hooking up a VPN, subscribing to some weird service?
It's on Sky. It's on Sky. My issue with the NPC is the number of teams. And I think I've said this before. Throwing stones in glass houses. A Welsh rugby fan saying there's too many teams. I see the irony in that, but it's very difficult and confusing for me to follow the NPC, and we get like 2 games a week on TV up here, so it's just with everything else that I follow, it was just too much.
Yeah, reasonable. So in the wee small hours of Friday morning where I am, Bay of Plenty, they squared off against Canterbury. Bay of Plenty actually, I think you're going to like this. They won the inaugural NPC season, but they never made a final. Huw, how does that possibly make any sense?
There wasn't finals the year they won it. Or
right.
Someone was disqualified.
In 1976, the first year, they crowned a champion but did not play a final. So this was their first shot at it.
Yeah, that's how the Magnus League used to work. The Ospreys won about 3 titles that way.
Really?
Yeah.
I know, football fans still kind of wish there was no rugby playoffs. I've heard a lot of people kind of kvetching about that, but as an American, I'm used to it.
I see the argument that it's unsporting. Munster winning the title, having finished 7th on the log a couple of seasons ago. I see why people don't like that. It makes sense. It's theoretically unfair. I wouldn't be against like the log champions getting a trophy and then having playoff champions off the back of that.
I was just going to say, maybe an extra award.
Yeah, at the same time, I totally see why it keeps the season way more interesting to have the playoffs. And, there's a lot of excitement about the URC for the race for 8, etc. last season. So I see both sides.
So this game kind of took a while to get going. They kind of traded penalties back and forth. But Amoni Narawa, he's grabbed a couple of All Blacks caps. He was tearing it up out there. It was low scoring, 8-13 at the break, but the hosts really took control in the second half, buoyed by the 5,000 plus fans on hand. By the way, the stadium looked pretty full. I think they said it was a sellout, technically. And they said, 5,120, something like that. Want to guess at what the record is for fans sitting in that stadium? Allegedly.
What did you say the sellout was, sorry?
5,100 something.
Oh, you can't call that a stadium. I mean,
hey.
The record... 7,000.
23,000 people allegedly packed their asses into that joint for a Lions game, apparently, way back in the day.
I wouldn't. Is that from like the 70s or something?
I think so.
Okay, back when fire safety was an
Exactly.
interest.
Yeah, at least 11,000 of those people were smoking at the time, too.
Yeah, definitely.
So, as I said, the Steamers, they kind of went on a 24-0 run and eventually won 32-20. Their first try of the day, by the way, was scored by none other than Joe Johnston, the mechanic, former favorite Free Jack. But on the other side, on Canterbury, do you want to take a guess at which former All Black came in off the bench to make his 300th first-class appearance?
Former All Black Canterbury.
300.
So it's a Crusaders player.
I believe so. Let me just double check that. Now I feel stupid.
Cody Taylor.
It was good old Ryan Crotty.
Oh, yeah, he's a Crusader, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so the first picture you see of him is in a Crusaders jersey, of course. Of course he is. Anyway, the result guaranteed Bay of Plenty a spot in the final. If Waikato were to upset the top-seeded Wellington, they'd even host it. It's been kind of a dream year for Bay of Plenty. And then, of course, yesterday we did have the big one, Wellington versus Waikato. The first thing I noticed, again, I think you're going to like this, Waikato were starting two different guys whose first initial was X. What are the odds of that?
That's your odds, or is it Xavier and I don't even know the other one.
Well, actually, I would love to know, which would you give better odds? Having two starters whose first names begin with X, or a coach choosing a 4-4 split on the bench in a semifinal? Because both those things are true.
Well, I'll give it to the 4-4 just because I've never heard of a double X before. And they need a third one so they can be the triple X team.
Oh, yeah. they can market whiskey off of this or something.
Yeah,
Moonshine.
exactly.
By the way, I did double check. Both X's were Xavier's. And it turns
like
out
Xavier
Wellington also had a Xavier. I'm like, 30 people, 3 Xaviers. Not the ratio I'm used to in my own experience.
They're all named after Xavier Rush, who used to play for Cardiff and was an All Black.
There you go. That probably is true, right? Anyway, after about a half hour, we were tied at 10. Are you ready for the tackle count after a half hour?
Go for it.
Waikato had made 60, Wellington 9.
9.
So it was really close. Waikato, they were down 5 points with 5 minutes left, but Wellington, they show their true colors, closed it out to secure home field advantage for next week's grand final. Close, though, 29-24. The Mulus definitely overachieved this year, but they were so close. To be honest, I'm still kind of mad at them for taking out Taranaki last weekend, so I didn't really mind this result. Oh, I forgot to put my little NPC graphic on. I had a nice little graphic to go here. There's Bay of Plenty celebrating. So next week, of course, Bay of Plenty, they'll be playing Wellington in Wellington for all the marbles. Just off the top of your head, what's your prediction for that final?
I have no prediction, David. I don't know who's good, who's bad.
Wellington were number 1, and the Steamers were number 4. So, but it was all pretty tight.
Wellington.
There we go. It's very safe. So, the other competitions we typically cover here, of course, are things like the URC, yay, the top 14, yay, and the PWR, which was buoyed this week. I think I just used the word buoyed twice in like 10 minutes. That's weird.
It's not a word we have in English. In English.
Oh, really?
Buoyed is what we say.
Buoyed. Sexist. The PWR, of course, was buoyed by the return of some of their top stars wrapping up the WXV. See what I did there? Wrapping it up.
Very good, yes.
We also, of course, had the Gallagher Premiership, which, not going to lie, I'm having a hard time caring too much about. Huw, I asked you which competition you wanted to cover first. I don't think it took you all that long to tell me it was the top 14. By the way, I wanted to say I love the format of the top 14 each week. Like, all the other comps are like, okay, this week we have 2 games on a Friday. Next week we might have 1, but maybe not. The top 14 are like, you get an early Saturday game, you get 4 midday games, you get a late game, and then you get a cracker on Sunday. Every week they do it. I love that. Can other competitions, do you think, learn something from the way the French do it?
Yeah, definitely. It's a debate that we've been having with on various URC pods that I've been on. The way that the French do it, they've got a Thursday night game, which kicks off at 9 p.m.
I
French
love
time.
that.
That's Pro de Deux, and it's always it's got its own slot. And then they have Friday night is all the other Pro de Deux games, and they all kick off at roughly the same time. I think there's one later kickoff.
It's
And then
fantastic.
Saturday and Sunday is top 14, so there's no overlap, there's no clash. Which both leagues are run by LNR, which is the same company, and then top 14 has a Sunday night game, which I think both looking forward to this week.
Oh yes,
We're going to be watching
I'm
it
staring at
after
the clock.
we've finished here, which is brilliant. And I've said there was a year during the COVID season that the URC or its forerunner had Monday night rugby,
Really?
which so Premier League soccer, they have Monday night football, and I've been chatting to people about whether they should do Monday night rugby in rugby, and we've agreed that yes, they could do it, but it would always have to be a big game. It would always have to be like something that everyone's going to want to watch to make it worth it. The Sunday night game in top 14 is normally the biggest game of the weekend.
Yeah.
Normally. So I'm very much looking forward to it today as we're recording, because it is very much the game of the weekend.
So I've been a little slow to get into the top 14 this year, mostly because they play an extra 3,486 matches. But it has gotten pretty exciting already, some interesting results. Before we, actually sat down, I actually tried to be organized for a change, and I asked if you might be interested in putting together a little sort of stat of the week for each of these competitions. Did you manage to find any cool little tidbits about the top 14?
So I had a look on the top 14's stat website. It's a very good one. It's obviously in French, and if you press translate to English, the translations are very literal and don't necessarily make sense and help you in any way understand what the stat is. Going down the list. So, quiz for you then, David. Who scored the most This is clubs. Which club has scored the most points?
I would imagine it's UBB. I would think it's our Border Beagles because of the 66 they dropped last week, but...
Yep. Okay,
Hey.
That's correct. So UBB, who scored the most tries?
Oh. Any other year I might say Penno, but he hasn't...
No, this is clubs. This is all clubs.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm saying... are you saying which club or which player?
Which club?
Oh, okay.
Don't think too hard.
Also UBB?
Yes. Who's got the most offloads?
UBB.
Yes. Who's got the most meters?
UBB.
Who's got the most
And that's
line breaks?
Oh, wow. Wow. Bordeaux again?
Yes. Who's got the most tackles made?
I'm going to say Lyon? No. Bordeaux.
Yes. And most defenders beaten?
Again, got to be Bordeaux.
No,
They're
Poe.
killing it. Ah! There had to be one.
Yes.
Is it really Poe?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, we're going to get to Border Beagles in just a sec. So yesterday morning, of course, the top 14 got started with Bayonne versus Racing 92. Bayonne hosed them pretty good, more than doubling up their guess 32-15. By the way,
it was 32-3 with not long left.
Yeah,
Unless
it
they got
was
two
some
late
garbage
tries.
time. So that old trope of French teams only caring about winning at home, it seems to be back with a vengeance this year. I'm pretty sure home teams went 7-0 last weekend. After this game ended, did you suppose we were in for more of that this week?
Well, it's according to the official website, it's 81% home win rate so far this season after 7 rounds, which is quite comprehensive. The story of that particular game that you just mentioned is Racing. So Racing, weirdly, if you actually look at the underlying stats, they're not like rock bottom in much, but you talk to anybody about Racing at the moment, and they're just an absolute horror show. They're a shambles. They're a disgrace. Like they make no sense. Their squad is a mess. Like loads of big names. There was a game they played against Toulon last week, which was 0-0 at halftime, and people were tweeting, these two teams should be fined by LNR for bringing the game into disrepute. It looked like that no one on that pitch had ever played rugby before. It was awful. It was awful rugby. Racing ended up winning that game quite comfortably. Le Garec, I think, scored and maybe one or two others. But Racing just all at sea as a club for the money they've spent. Their stadium was obviously used by the Olympics for the swimming, and they're now playing in a garden shed somewhere. It looks dreadful, and there's about 10 people there. Just, yeah, the only saving grace is that their nearest and dearest, we'll come on to in a minute, I suppose, so I won't ruin it, doing even worse. But just on Bayonne, Makela, who plays on the wing for them, is currently top for tries with 6, defenders beating with 20, and turnovers 1.
Wow, that's a great combo.
Yeah, Fijians love a bit of top 14.
It's so funny that you mentioned all this because my very next question was, what's wrong with Racing right now? I made the comment that they seem like they've been a bit of a mess ever since Finn left. Just saying.
They weren't particularly good. The only title that they ever won was when they had Dan Carter. So that put that into perspective.
How many minutes did he rack up that year? Was it 6, 8?
He did. No, he was good. He won them the title basically. But everything's wrong with them. They've got this guy called Dan Lancaster playing for them, right? Their coach's name is Stuart Lancaster. Dan Lancaster is his son. And they've been starting Dan Lancaster at 12 ahead of Joshua Tuisova. And Dan Lancaster's experience before he became first choice inside centre at Racing, where his dad is in charge, was he played, I think, 4 games for Ealing Trailfinders in the English Championship.
Huh. That's that is a guaranteed successful formula right there. Just have your son do it.
He's got Owen Farrell passing him the ball. Dan Lancaster isn't amazing. I haven't watched him very closely. When I have watched him, he wasn't brilliant. I don't think he's the root cause of all of their problems, but he might be what you call a microcosm of their problems.
They're such a weird team. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on them to always be, top 3, top 4. I feel like nobody expects them to be winning titles, but people expect them to be good. I think maybe just because they're in Paris, and it's not happening.
Yeah, no, really no.
So elsewhere, Perpignan, they just edged out Lyon for our second home win in a row. It was 29-26. Any thoughts on this contest? By the way, have Perpignan sort of turned a corner? They're only 3-4 this year, but they feel like a serious team for a change.
Perpignan, not really. No, I don't think so. I think they're going to be lower middle of the table like they normally are. Tommaso Allen plays for them is the pretty much most interesting thing. Their kit is quite interesting, I suppose. In terms of Lyon, the team to watch this season for me, they've got some tidy players. Semi Randrandra, by the way, heard of him. David Niniashvili, who I think is off to La Rochelle in a season or 2. He's still playing there. And Baptiste Koilu is the most try-scoring rugby player on the world, as far as I'm aware. I think he scored 27 tries in his last 27 games. Now, I think that, to be fair, Raphael Storti, I think, has scored 32 in 32. But he was in the Pro D2 and he had a long break, whereas Koilu has just been not stopped scoring tries. He was in the top 14 scoring tries, went on the summer tour, scored tries, and is now still scoring tries. Ridiculous. Unbelievable try scoring rate. Plays scrum half for Lyon.
So Cast, they made mincemeat out of a struggling Stade Francais team, 35-13. And this one, you mentioned to me the other day that there's a lot of discontent in that squad these days. What can you tell us is going on with the drink boxes?
So they sacked their head coach, and Paul Gustard took over a week or 2 ago. They are, if you just run down the basic stats, points for 13th, second bottom, tries for 12th, third bottom, and points against 13th, as in second most points conceded. They're fortunate that Vaughan in the league are also struggling quite badly, but they're newly promoted from the Pro D2. Stade Francais were finished top of the log, or second on the log, last season, and they have just been dire this season. Really, really, really bad. I don't know the details, but there's been all sorts of unpleasant stories coming out of Stade Francais as well. Discontent.
Like what? Because I'm never going to run across those stories here.
I don't know the exact details, and I don't want to say anything libelous, but I think one of their coaches was a bit of a naughty boy at some point.
Good idea. They're another team I want to be good. Like, I love their kit. I love the fact that when they play, the owners clearly tell every one of the coaches, you have to have a Capri Sun in front of you. Nobody ever touches it, but it has to be there in front of you. I get a huge kick out of that. I'm like,
Yeah, I also love them. I want them to do well, and they're just not.
I feel like when you first get hired by them, you go to, your new employee orientation, and they're like, here's your Capri Sun, and you just carry it around with you. It's just in your bag, and you're like, oh, okay, got it.
I did a stats drop on Brad Weber, who plays for them, and he liked it. And then a week later, he retweeted the same one, a week-old tweet. And then a week after that, he commented on it and tagged someone in it. So, A, I'm apparently best friends with Brad Weber.
Nice.
B, Brad Weber searches his own name on Twitter, bookmarks tweets, and repeatedly comes back to them week after week. So I think he needs to do something else good in a game so I can do another one, because he can't keep relying on the same game from 4 weeks ago.
It sounds like he can.
Yeah, I think I put in my tweet, are the All Blacks missing him? And he liked it.
Oh, there you go. Moving on to the next one for me, at least, Toulon. They kept our home streak alive, taking down Montpellier 30-17. By the way, have you ever been to a match in Toulon? Like, it's got to be right near the top of my bucket list. The atmosphere, unbelievable.
Absolutely. I really want to go. I've never been, but I dearly love to go. We did intend to go to Toulon for a day out when I was in France last year, but unfortunately, for reasons, couldn't make it happen, and I was gutted. And yeah, definitely, absolutely, bucket list is the word that I would use. But Toulon, another mess of a rugby team. Complete shambles on the pitch, yet somehow winning. They went to the England school of being rubbish, yet winning most of their games. And it makes no sense, because they got no plan. Wainakolo, though, in this game, another Fijian winger, 19 defenders beaten in one game.
In one game?
19.
Oh my gosh.
That's a lot.
That's almost like that's almost the entire 23.
I know, that's more than players are actually on the pitch for him to beat.
Exactly. Bring somebody else out. Come on.
Yeah, he's beating a couple of crowd members.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. I have a soft spot for Toulon, but they are so up and down. You just don't know which Toulon you're going to get. And I mean, maybe they are doing we're at home, we're going to do the pilu pilu, and everyone's going to be happy. But it's hard to trust them to get a result. You already mentioned them. Claremont, of course, smashed Vaughan 55-33. I feel like you really liked Vaughan last year. I know you were kind of following the Pro de Deux. They've shown that they can definitely score some points. But they're just not getting the wins. Do you think it's already a done deal that they're going to be relegated again this year?
It's starting to get that way. They've had a really, really tough schedule. They've had some really hard games.
They started against Toulouse.
Yeah,
there you go. Welcome.
Mind you, first ever club from Brittany. So people who don't know the geography of France, Brittany is the northwest of France, and Vaughan are the first ever club from the northwest of France to get in the top 14.
Really?
Rugby in France is very south of France. Sports, they've got the two clubs in Paris, and everybody else is in the south of France. So for Vaughan to get there is a huge story. The club was founded by paratroopers in the 40s or 50s, came out of a barracks. Rugby's a barracks sport. That's not a surprise. But they actually, back in the 50s, I want to say, they were in the semi-final of something, and the game had to be called off because all of their squad got called up to fight in the Franco-Chinese War. So, cool club, lots of interesting history to them. And you're right, I do have more than a soft spot for them. Scarlets have got them in Challenge Cup. Sadly, it's in Llanelli rather than in Vaughan. I would have loved to have go away for that game. And they've got the Breton national anthem. There's a Breton anthem.
Right.
And it's to the tune of the Welsh national anthem. And
no way.
Breton is a language, and Breton is very similar to Welsh. So
I had no idea.
Very, very cool club. I hope they stay up, but unfortunately they are starting to get cut a bit adrift now. They're bottom of the table and they've conceded 34 tries. I don't think anybody has conceded more than 27. So,
well, the yo-yoing of teams up and down, it can't be good for fans, right? It's almost like, hey, your team was so good this year, your reward is to lose almost every game next year and then come right back down to the Pro de Deux. Congrats.
Yeah, that's kind of the reality of promotion relegation, though. If you look at Premiership soccer, again, that's mostly what happens. To be fair, France still does it the best in terms of they got an automatic relegation spot and they have the access game. which is the most fun thing ever.
It
but
is.
Japan, I think,
it must
also
be the
has same
worst game
format.
to play in as a player, and one of the best to see as a fan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, it's not on telly in the UK. It's one of the ones that isn't on telly. It's the most one that I wanted to watch because Grenoble nearly beat Montpellier in the ultimate good guys versus bad guys type thing.
I know. Where is Sam Davies now, by the way?
Still at Grenoble.
He is, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, Po versus Toulouse. That was our final match on Saturday. Leave it to Toulouse to break our little streak of home wins. They took down their hosts 14-22. Kinghorn had another good game for the visitors. How good for him has it been ever since leaving Edinburgh?
Revolutionary. And to be fair, I questioned the move at the time because Blair Kinghorn in my head is nominally a fullback, and they already had Ange Capuozzo, Juan Cruz Malia, and Thomas Ramos. So I was like, why are they signing another fullback? And then turns out he's actually been really, really good. Yeah. And he started ahead of Thomas Ramos in the Champions Cup final. So there you go.
And I think Capuozzo was a healthy scratch, I think. I don't think he made the 23 that day, did he?
I don't think he did. Although Ange Capuozzo has been very, very good last couple of games. He was... Obviously, Dupont scored a hat-trick last week, and everyone was talking about that, but Ange Capuozzo was actually the best player in that game.
Oh, interesting.
Two of Dupont's tries were assisted by Ange Capuozzo, and I felt he was the best one. Dupont was back in this game against Po as well and did a stupid behind-the-back pass thing that now everyone's talking about. Now everybody, apart from South Africa, thinks is amazing, and all of South Africa thinks is below Curry Cup level, obviously. But... yeah, Toulouse were very iffy to begin the season, but now that Dupont is back, it's not just that he himself is obviously an incredible player playing for them, but all of his teammates seem to have grown an extra inch since he's come back as well, and they look like a different outfit mentally now that he's back in the team.
Yeah, he might have brought back some of that California vibes with him.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw any of those posts. Like, so I'm feel lucky to be friendly with Dallin Stanford, and of course he's been in this competition, this beach rugby competition in Southern California for as long as anyone can remember. And it's one of these games where he's there, Perry Baker shows up, other former Eagles show up, men and women, everybody's welcome. And then when Dupont was visiting California, he shows up. They go to their little evening rugby game, and Antoine Dupont shows up and wants to play. Not bad, eh?
Yeah, I was talking to our friend Julia, and apparently American women have been fawning over Dupont.
Oh, really?
And I was like, Jesus, don't send them Untermac, they'll die. Because
exactly.
Dupont is a very middling attractive rugby player, if lower middling attractiveness as a human. And there are some, like, he's like the 10th most attractive man at Toulouse. So if they
could just send Entomac's hair. That's all they really need.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm big into Peter Aki at the moment. I think he's currently the most handsome man in rugby.
Good call. Yeah. I don't know. In the NPC this weekend, Braden Enor, he was playing again. Woof. Anyway, don't look now. But UBB can actually go top of the table. You mentioned all the categories in which they already are leading. It's about, 87 minutes from now they're going to be playing. They have to go away to La Rochelle. Not an easy one, but do you see them, coming through and suddenly being league leaders?
Big challenge. They only need 1 point, I think, to overtake Toulouse at the top.
To tie them, I think, yeah.
Yeah. They beat Toulouse in Toulouse. It was Toulouse's first home loss in like a million games or something like that. Which is a gripping game. One of my favorite games I've watched so far.
It was fantastic.
I was on the floor. I was on my knees watching it towards the end. It was so stressful. I've become a proper, shout out to our friend Maz. I'm a proper UBB diehard now. I think that Lucu should start ahead of Dupont for France. That's how completely insane I am about supporting UBB. Jalibert is playing the best rugby of any 10 in Europe, in my opinion, at the moment. Oh, wow. But he's rested for this game. No Jalibert, no Lucu.
Better than Ben Healy?
La Rochelle.
Sorry.
Yes.
that might have been mean.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. Bordeaux have gone 7-1 split for this game.
Wow. Oh, that's surprising. Huh. Well, they have people who play 80 minutes. Anyway, yeah, that's going to be cracking. I can't wait. By the way, what have they been doing right this year? Like, they were great last year, but leading into that final, I felt like it was a done deal that they weren't going to win, and sure enough, they got pretty well smacked around. This year, it feels different. What's different? What are they doing right this year?
I think they're just doubling down. It speaks to a lot to their character because of what happened to them in the final. It was so awful. But
yeah, I kind of expected them to come out really slow this year, like the hangover from that. Like, that could have devastated them, right?
Yeah, so it's a lot of mental fortitude. #fortitude, Vancouver Highlanders. Copyright. But
I have a whole segment for them later, right after we finish, right after we do Major League Baseball playoffs.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's really impressive. What are they doing right? They're just doubling down on who they are and what they are, and they play. They're the most watchable team in rugby. If someone wanted to get into rugby, say which team should I watch, I'd say Bordeaux over anybody. Incredibly entertaining to watch with fantastic players.
Even their kit, I like everything about them. I like.
Yeah, people who know that the away kit for Bordeaux is always the nicer one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, their points differential is 97 right now. Who's next closest to that? That's it. The next closest one, 75 for Toulouse, who we all think of as dominant, and then the next numbers I see are like in the 30s, and then we get into the negatives. So 97 after, and they haven't played their 7th match yet. That's crazy.
Yep.
Well, I thought I'd do a little something special for us here. I, again, got organized ahead of time and asked if you would like to join us for the Diamond in the Ruck Award. Usually, I'm the one to give out this, most prestigious of all rugby awards, but I've decided to pass it off to my good buddy Huw. Huw, out of these competitions, I'm guessing it's not an NPC player. Who is going to be your Diamond in the Ruck this week?
Well, you're wrong. It is an NPC player. So I only saw this because there was a headline about it, and I'm going to give it to Willis Halaholo, who I believe is playing for Bay of Plenty. Is that right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So I thought he was done. I thought he was on Boot Hill. I thought he was finished because he got his contract extended by Cardiff. He looked miles off the pace last season, and he's obviously been massively injury ridden. Injury riddled. And by all accounts, he's doing great things for Bay of Plenty. So shout out to him, Welsh international. Delighted to see it.
That's fantastic. Good shout. Yeah, my script got too long. I had a little bit in here about how there was one of those moments he had where there's a defender directly in front of him, like, okay, I'm perfectly squared up to stop you, and he was like, should I make any effort to go around you at all? Nah, just freight trained him. Boom! It was like the Jonah Lomu, over, what was that guy's name? Cat, in that World Cup. It was that kind of try. It was fantastic. Oh, great choice. Halaholo, you are this week's Diamond in the Ruck. Well done. Well, my friend, great selection there. Huw, my friend, has been fantastic. This is, of course, part 1 of our weekend wrap-up. For those watching or listening, we'll be coming right back with part 2, which is going to cover the rest of the weekend's action. Huw, any final thoughts on the top 14 after 7 rounds? It's been fun.
Sunday night rugby is the best thing ever. The thing is, when Bordeaux are on Sunday night, it makes me want to go out and buy a bottle of red wine and drink it while I watch that, because that's kind of what you have to do, even though I have work in the morning. So,
work schmirk.
Yeah.
Okay, that does it for this first half. Really appreciate your time. We'll get right back to it with all the other action. And Huw, thank you again so much for your time. It's always just great to see you.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it does, neat.
You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?